Hello and welcome once again to this Red Gaming Tech video, myself and Marta, where as always I'm here with the latest news from the tech and gaming world from the last 24 or so hours as of the 11th of August. Also now apologise for any background noise. We are currently in the middle of a heat wave, so I cannot close the window. Just have to bear with it, I'm afraid, because I'm already melting into a very sticky puddle. Anyway, there's going to be a couple of news videos for you today, so let's get stuck right into today's topics for this video, and we're going to begin with an interesting update from Microsoft. So, you may recall that back in May of this year, Microsoft said that they'll be sharing new information about the Xbox Series X, Game Studios, Game Pass, and so on a monthly basis, and at the time, Microsoft said, quote, starting with May 7th episode of Inside Xbox, we'll be showcasing what happens next in the world of Xbox every month, which is why we're calling it Xbox 2020. Obviously, this hasn't really borne that much fruit. We obviously saw the May update and the recent games showcase, but that is pretty much it, and has kind of left fans wondering when they would actually see more information. But it looks like Microsoft has silently dropped the Xbox 2020 phrasing, as they have updated their initial article on the official Xbox Wire, and they have now removed the Xbox 2020 phrasing, and it says, quote, editor's note, on 8th of the 7th 2020, Xbox has a massive year ahead of us as outlined below. After reassessing our programming for the rest of the year, we've decided to stop using the Xbox 2020 phrasing, as it implied we'll be releasing information in one way only, through a dedicated monthly show. We've got so much more to share with news about Xbox Series X, new games like Halo Infinite, and cloud gaming via Xbox Game Pass. We're going to share that news in a variety of ways. It may sometimes be a dedicated show, YouTube videos partnering with others, or sharing the latest via Xbox Wire. We want to stay flexible with how we connect with you. So basically this just confirms that, like we've seen over the past few months, we will not be seeing a monthly event from Microsoft, and instead the news is going to be just drip-fed to us in a variety of ways, one of which could be a full-on event like we saw recently with the Xbox Game Showcase. I don't really blame them for doing this, to be honest. It just gives them more breathing room, a bit more flexibility, and doesn't put them in such intense pressure to produce a show every month, and that must take a lot of time, a lot of coordination with developers, and obviously they're not always going to have new stuff to show, especially if some of the games they're talking about are very early builds. But speaking of the Xbox Series X, we actually may have a date for the launch. So I'm sure you saw in our video yesterday, or one of our videos yesterday I should say, that thanks to an early release of the Xbox Series X console, we pretty much have a confirmation of the Xbox Series S, otherwise known as Lockhart, because the controller packaging did say that it supported both the Xbox Series X and S. And the information that's come from this has not ended, because we also have the warranty details on the controller, so we can see when the warranty ends. And I'm sure you're wondering, how does this have to do with anything ever? Bear with me, you will see. Anyway, so the warranty ends on the 5th of November 2021, and Microsoft typically have a limited 1-year warranty policy. So when you buy it, you have 1 year in which if something happens within their terms and blah blah blah, you can get it replaced, repaired, etc. So this basically means, or at least suggests, that the Xbox Series X and S will both have a release date of November the 5th, 2020. Now, as always, guys, this is not confirmed. It's not confirmed until it comes from the mouth of Microsoft. So the usual salt shaker is required. Pinch of salt, TM, is definitely needed for this one. But it would make sense, to be honest. Obviously, both of the this generation consoles, should I say, launched in November. And according to rumours and expectations, we are going to be expecting a reveal from both Sony and Microsoft this month for the release date and pricing of their next generation consoles. So obviously we shouldn't take this as confirmed, but it just makes perfect sense to me. Oh, also you will find linked in the description an article that I wrote about this, and in that article you will see there's a link to a Xbox Series X and S controller unboxing. So if perhaps you wanted a closer look than the images that we saw on Twitter, and a real nice look at the controller, should I say, they even look at the battery pack and so on and so on, it is there for your perusal. I would check it out, actually. It's actually kind of interesting and nice to get a bit of an early look at the controller. But we're going to move on from that to some disappointing news for Vampire: The Masquerade Bloodlines 2. So basically, we have an unfortunate delay of the game, which is a real shame, and this is official. No salt required for this one. The game's Twitter account shared a message which was written by Andy Kipling, the CEO of Hardsuit Labs, who are of course the developers, and Jacob Month of Paradox, product segment owner of the publisher, which of course are Paradox. So for those of you wondering why, well, let me just read you what they had to say. Quote, "We are moving the launch of Vampire: The Masquerade Bloodlines 2 to 2021. Our goal has always been to deliver the best game possible to immerse you into a Seattle reimagined in the world of darkness and deliver a worthy successor to the original Bloodlines game. Due to the quality bar and ambitions we have set for ourselves, we have made the difficult decision that we need more time. That means our goal to release in 2020 is no longer possible. Moving launch is one of the changes we are making to ensure the best player experience possible. This is not a decision taken lightly, nor is it the first option we considered. We will share more information in the coming months on launch timing and other organisational changes that will help us achieve this goal. We understand that this will be a disappointment to many of you, but we also appreciate how our ambition is echoed through many parts of the community. We hope that you understand that, while difficult, this is the right call." So, this is not the first time that Bloodlines 2 has been delayed. It was originally meant to launch early this year. And obviously it was pushed back to $2020 and was probably going to originally plan to come out sort of end of the year Christmas launch period, and now it has been pushed back to just 2021. Now obviously it's always better just to take your time and make sure the game is polished and finished and complete on launch. Thankfully this trend has kind of died out a bit now, but there was a while where a game would launch and it would just be like this absolute piece of garbage, and then there would be like a day 1 patch or a day 2 patch and it would fix all the problems, and I'm just like, well, and that's if you're lucky, by the way. Obviously I would prefer just to have the game and it play well, look great, and be a sequel that we have all been very eagerly anticipating. Now my only concern with this is I just hope that it's not in development hell, because, you know, the fact that it's been delayed twice is kind of concerning, but that doesn't necessarily mean much. It's just a mild concern that I have, but it could be completely baseless. Obviously not privy to any inside information other than what I've just told you. With all that said, however, let's move on to our next topic, which is actually regarding Marvel's Avengers and Spider-Man again. This information comes to us thanks to an interview that the developers of Marvel's Avengers had with the folks over at WCCF Tech. And they confirmed that the Spider-Man's inclusion in the game will actually not interact with the main story in any significant way. Now, I'm sure you remember there's been a lot of controversy recently because Spider-Man is exclusive to the PlayStation. And there's also a bunch of other exclusive skins and such as well, which I've already ranted about, so I'm not going to go on that topic again. But the point of this is that the story DLC for Spider-Man will be his own story entirely. And Sony and Crystal Dynamics apparently want the DLC to be seen as a, quote, cherry on top. So just to reiterate, it's going to be a standalone story and it's not going to affect the main game's overarching storyline. So, you know, that's great and everything, but as I've said before, it's like the exclusive skins and the carving up of content and DLC being exclusive to certain platforms. It's just... I will say one thing. Had a lot of people saying in the comments when I discussed this before, oh, you don't say anything when this company does it. It doesn't matter who does it. Literally do not care which company does it. It could be Bob down the street. Do not care. Regardless of who does it, carving up content. So you've got a game that's on a multi-platform and you've got DLC. Oh, I'm only going to give DLC to this thing, but I'm also going to only give this piece of DLC to that thing. So no player ever gets the complete experience. That's why I don't agree with it. Anyway, I'm going to stop myself there before I go off on a whole tangent. So, yet more disappointing news. I know this video is a bit of a feels bad man, as at this time we have some updates for Capcom and Street Fighter. So this is definitely going to be a bit of a sad day for any long-standing fans of the Street Fighter series, because Yoshinori Ono, who has been the executive producer of Street Fighter series, has stepped down after almost 30 years at working for Capcom. He has tweeted officially about this, saying, quote, "I've been with the Street Fighter brand for a long time, experiencing good times, bad times, and even non-existent times. My heart is filled with appreciation to those players who've been giving warm and kind support on the brand, especially over the past decade or so, as all the activities in the Street Fighter brand regained sunshine and grew its liveliness." So, it is official, he is leaving Capcom and of course leaving the Street Fighter series in the capable hands of Capcom themselves. Now you may recall there were already reports doing the rounds that he had been removed from the position of director on Street Fighter 6, which apparently will have a change of direction, has been given an extra year in development. My guess is the extra year is just so they do not have another Street Fighter 5 launch on their hands, and to be honest, good, because that was just a disgrace. I will say I'm not a huge fan of Street Fighter. I mean, I have played Super Street Fighter 4, put some time into it and all of that. I used to really be into fighting games when I was young, but I just don't have the time to really sit and get good at them anymore, so I've just kind of fallen out of that loop. So it's not something that I personally have a lot of investment in, but I know Paul is a huge Street Fighter fan, and obviously many of you watching this video probably are, so I guess the important thing to say is to thank Yoshinori for all of his hard work over the last 30 years, and that he will definitely be missed, I think, by every Street Fighter fan. Anyway, we're going to finish off our video now with a very interesting study about loot boxes. Now, obviously, there has been a lot of back and forth and discussion and opinions and legal movements about whether or not loot boxes are gambling. Obviously, in some states and certain countries, they are now recognised as gambling. And I've always held the position that loot boxes are gambling. The fact that it's digital only is not relevant to your brain. And there's been a new study which has been posted about by the Australian Kotaku site. And of course, you can find that linked below. And a new research study by CQ University Australia's Experimental Gambling Research Laboratory, or EGRL, has actually identified a very interesting link between loot boxes and real-life gambling problems. So they analysed a group of 1,954 people aged 12 to 24. And apparently they chose this group based on their statistical vulnerabilities with gambling and high use of video games. And of those surveyed, 22.3% of participants admitted they had gambling problems, and the study notes that this is actually unusually high and potentially not representative of trends in the population of this particular area of Australia. So essentially, the study has found that gamers who buy loot boxes are more likely to gamble in real life, as well as put larger bets down more often than those who refused these add-ons. Now, the study did also look at the current video games market and tried to discern how many of them have loot boxes and so on. And the results are actually really interesting, I find, because it revealed that 62% of the top best-selling video games have loot boxes in some form. 93.2% of the respondents to the study have played one or more of those games in the last year, with 69.4% having them opened a loot box from these games during that same period. However, only 32.9% actually purchased these loot boxes. Now, I'm not going to read through the entire Kotaku article because that's not fair to them, and it's also very, very lengthy. I just wanted to discuss this study and kind of get your thoughts on it. I will finish up the topic with a bit of a quote from study co-author Dr. Alex Russell, and they said to Kotaku Australia, quote, "Loot boxes in video games are similar to gambling since players invest time and money in obtaining them, and there's a thrill around the possibility of gaining a rare and valuable reward." And this is pretty much what I've been saying, what everyone ever has been saying, to be fair, not just me, that it doesn't matter that it's digital. To your brain, it's still releasing the same endorphins if you get that shiny skin in Overwatch or whatever. Now, obviously, this is just one study. Do keep that in mind, but I do find it interesting that there is that link. because there's been more and more discussion on whether or not loot boxes should be recognised as gambling, and I think eventually it will come to the point where they are seen as gambling, legally speaking, by most countries. But obviously, whether or not that happens, we'll have to wait and see. Now, if you want to read the full article, and you can see the full findings of the EGRL reports, you can also find that linked below. But thank you so much for watching. As I said at the start of this video, there will be another video later on today, so do keep your eyes peeled for that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.